this investigation. I want to talk through what we did throughout the day. It was our first full day on scene conducting investigative work. There was a lot of activity that went on today. All of our groups formed around looking at the structure, around looking at the systems of the aircraft, operations, and survival factors. And those are the areas I want to go through. So our structures team, we tweeted out a diagram of the door plug and components. And I just want to emphasize the correct term here is really plug. It is not a door because it's not usable. You can call it a door plug or a plug, but it's not a door. So we tweeted out the diagram of the door plug and components courtesy of Bỗng because we wanted to show the door plug, the structure of the airframe and the components to help everyone understand what the structure looks like. There are two hinges on the bottom. These hinges are really designed to open the plug for inspection. It opens about 15 degrees. There are also 12 what they call stop fittings, 6 on each side, and just to describe it in a little bit more understandable way, it's essentially a circle that is on the door plug and a matching circle that's on the frame. And these line up, and the purpose of a stop fitting is to prevent that door plug from being pushed out of the airframe. So that is what's holding the door in place. So the structures team spent the entire day documenting damage, deformation, and witness marks on the left plug surround structure, that's the frame, in situ, as it stands right now. They took photos, they looked at witness marks, they looked for paint transfer, and they identified the components that they want to send back to our lab for further evaluation. And it's really all the fittings and some additional components that they want to send back to the lab and look under the microscope to take a closer look. They'll look for fractures, they'll look at more paint marks, some other, if anything was sheared or there was any deformation, they may be able to see it better under the microscope. Tomorrow they will take a look at the intact plug on the right side of the airplane. They will take the panels off and take a look at that. Now our systems group began looking at all the aircraft systems. They documented the entire flight deck, and they asked about the auto pressurization fail light that did illuminate in 3 previous flights, one on December 7th, one on January 3rd, and one on January 4th. In these 3 previous flights, after the light illuminated, they flipped the switch to alt mode, which is normal. There's a backup. It was very benign. Nothing occurred, very benign. The light illuminated. They flipped it, they reported it, it was tested by maintenance, and then reset. I'm sure I will be asked if there is any correlation between the light that illuminated and the expulsion of the door plug. We don't know that there was any correlation of the two. It could be entirely separate. We do know that there was a decision by Alaska Airlines to a restriction, actually, they put in place. They call it an ETOPS restriction that prevented that plane from being flown to Hawaii over water. so that it could, if some light did illuminate, it could return very quickly to an airport. Again, it's very much described as benign, but we did order, one thing I should mention is they did order additional maintenance look at that light that was not completed before the time of this event. We plan to look at that more, and we've requested documentation on all defects since delivery of the aircraft on October 31st. Our survival factors group carefully documented damage to the interior of the aircraft. That was from the impact of the explosive decompression. There was a lot of damage to paneling, to trim, to the windows, meaning the internal portion of the window. That's the plexiglass, the plastic portion, but the seal in the windows were still intact. Some of the insulation was pulled out in some areas. Those are all not critical to the structure of the aircraft. So I just want to emphasize that, but they did document damage to the interior of the aircraft in the following rows. Rows 33, 32, 31, 27, 26, 25, 12, 11, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Again, on 26 and 25, you had damage to the seats as well. The 26A was torqued, so was 25A. The headrests on 25A and 26A were gone. The seat back on 26A is also missing. The tray table on the back of 26A is also missing. So they pulled those seats out. We would like to take a closer look at those. We are also looking at the functionality of one of the oxygen panels. We found that the pin is down. We want to see the way it's configured right now. The oxygen masks are up in the panel, so that tells us a couple of things. Either they didn't drop, or they did, and what often happens is as passengers are deplaning, they will put the oxygen masks out of the way and back up into the panel. So we're going to contact the passengers in that row and ask what occurred there. So the survival factors team also looked at the exterior of the aircraft and verified that there is no structural damage to the aircraft. Again, I want to repeat, no structural damage to the aircraft. That damage on the inside, that's just interior paneling, trim. It has nothing to do with the structure of the aircraft and airframe itself. That is not damaged. I will also mention that I was asked about passengers, whether passengers were moved from 26A and B. They were not moved from 26A and B. There was no one in those seats. There were empty seats. Again, we have 178 seats on this plane. 171 had passengers in them. On the plane were 3 babies held in the laps of caregivers. I do want to mention safety involving infants in your lap. The NTSB has long recommended, and the Federal Aviation Administration has long recommended, and Alaska Airlines on their website also recommends for caregivers or those accompanying infants under the age of 2 to purchase a seat for that infant and to put them in their own car seat, their car carrier, and to strap them in to ensure safety. If you think about it, what is being told to passengers by the flight attendants during a safety briefing? Please secure all your loose items, put bags under the seats during takeoff, during landing. That's for safety, so things don't move around. The folks we should be most focused on, other than those around the cabin, are our most precious children. And so we would urge passengers to put their children under two in their own seat in a FAA-approved car seat so that they are secure and that they are safe in case something like this happens. It's also key in turbulent events to ensure that they are safe and prevent any sort of injury. So I just want to highlight that. I also want to mention there were 4 unaccompanied minors on this flight. You may, as a minor, travel unaccompanied between the ages of 5 and 17. So there were 4 unaccompanied minors, and the flight attendants were very concerned for their safety, very focused on whether they had their masks and that their masks were secured. So after this explosive event occurred suddenly, the flight attendants were very focused on what was going on with those children. Were they safe? Were they secure? Did they have their seatbelts or their lap belts on? And did they have their masks on? And they did. But I really want to thank the actions of the flight attendants. I mean, the flight attendants are there for our safety and during emergency, and their actions were really heroic. And so I really want to thank them for that. We were able to interview the 2 flight attendants in the forward portion of the aircraft. Tomorrow, we will interview the 2 in the aft portion of the aircraft. But, as I move into operations and what was going on the flight deck, I'm going to talk about the cockpit door that had opened when this explosive decompression had occurred. The cockpit door flew open immediately, and at this point, the flight attendant in the forward portion of the aircraft was standing, and the cockpit door flew open, hit the laboratory door. That door, the laboratory door, got stuck. She was very concerned that was somebody in there. There was no one in there, but that was stuck. And she did attempt to shut the door 3 times. It did eventually shut, but it did blow open during the explosive decompression. So let's talk about what was going on in the flight deck. At the time, we did interview the flight crew. And so from the interviews with them and the flight attendants, we were able to piece some things together that I want to mention. They heard a bang. They hear a bang. They immediately put on their oxygen masks. At the time there is a bang, the door flies open. There is a quick reference checklist that's laminated in front of them. This is not the quick reference handbook. That is to the right side of the captain, but the checklist, the laminated checklist, flies out the door. The captain takes the quick reference handbook, hands it over to the first officer. They start going through their memory items. When this explosive decompression occurred and the door flew open, the flight attendant reports that she saw the first officer jolt forward. The first officer lost her headset at that moment. It was pulled off. The captain had a portion of the headset pulled off, but they put their masks on turned on the speaker so they could communicate with folks back in the cabin. Communication was a serious issue. The flight attendants reported that they were not getting, that it was difficult to get information from the flight deck, and the flight deck was having trouble also communicating. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But I do want to emphasize that the actions of the flight crew were really incredible. I imagine, and just from talking with everyone who was part of the interviews, it was described as chaos, very loud between the air and everything going on around them, and it was very violent when the rapid decompression and the door was expelled out of the plane. So there was a lot going on, and I just really want to, we want to thank the actions of the flight crew. That was equally heroic. Just the flight crew entirely did an excellent job. Thank you for that. Along with, well, I'll get back to that in a minute. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the search for the door plug. First and foremost, I want to thank the community. Every single time the NTSB asks the community to come together, provide photos, provide videos, look for something, report back in, it happens. The community came together and just went all out to try to look for this door plug. Now, just describing the door plug for everyone, which we have not found yet. It is yellowish green on one side and kind of can blend in and with vegetation, and it's white on the other side. It is 26 by 48 inches and weighs 63 pounds. So it's pretty large. Some community members found a cell phone in a yard and a cell phone on the side of the road and contacted us and handed that in. I would love for those two community members to email witness@ntsb.gov so that I can properly thank them. I would very much like to do that on behalf of the entire NTSB. We've also asked businesses in this location to look at their roofs to see if something is stuck on a roof. And then we are asking homeowners and businesses, if you have Ring, if you have security cameras. I initially said 5:17 p.m. We went back and looked. I want to correct that. It's 5:11 p.m. Look at your Ring, look at your security cameras around 5:11 p.m. and see if you see anything. If you see something, please report it to us, witness@ntsb.gov, or please call local authorities. Now, this morning we sent back the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder to our labs. Those arrived later this afternoon. We are using part of the data in the flight data recorder to narrow the area that we want to search for the door plug. The cockpit voice recorder was completely overwritten. There is nothing on the cockpit voice recorder. Now, the Emergency Operations Center at this point was being established pretty rapidly by Alaska. There was a lot going on the flight deck and on the plane. It's a very chaotic event. The circuit breaker for the CVR was not pulled. The maintenance team went out to get it, but it was right at about the 2-hour mark, and it was completely overwritten. At 2 hours, it re-records over it, so we have nothing from the CVR. I want to focus on that for a second. Since 2018, we've done 10 investigations where the CVR was overridden. 4 of those were recent runway incursions. We have this event, and back in 2018, there was a very significant near miss with an Air Canada plane that almost landed on a taxiway at San Francisco International Airport. On that taxiway were 4 airplanes with a combined total of about 1,000 people. The Air Canada plane came within 60 feet of coming right down on one of those airplanes that had passengers on it before it began to perform a go-around. The CVR was completely overwritten. The NTSB has many times talked about the need to increase the time on CVRs from 2 hours to 25 hours, which is consistent with Europe and many other countries. Now, the FAA, thankfully, has taken some recent action to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking to extend CVR time from 2 hours to 25 hours, but only on newly manufactured aircraft. So it would not affect this aircraft. It can be, you can easily install a different cockpit voice recorder and increase the time from 2 hours to 25 hours. The planes that are in service now can have a life of 40, 50 years. So what that notice of proposed rulemaking is doing is saying everything out there now that can be out there in service for 40 to 50 years will not have 25-hour CVR, but anything that will be manufactured in the future would have 25-hour CVRs. Cockpit voice recorders aren't just convenient for the NTSB to use in investigations or the FAA to use in investigations. They are critical to helping us accurately pinpoint what was going on. And it's key to safety. For Alaska Airlines, they want to know affirmatively what was occurring in the cockpit. Anybody who learns how to fly is taught aviate, navigate, communicate. Communication is key. Why? Because the flight crew on the flight deck do not have situational awareness to what is going on in the back. They need to know what's going on in the cabin, so that communication needs to occur. They have to know how quickly they need to land. And if that communication is not recorded, that is unfortunately a loss for us, and a loss for FAA, and a loss for safety, because that information is key, not just for our investigation, but for improving aviation safety. So I'm calling on the FAA to change the rulemaking. You have a notice of proposed rulemaking out right now. We are making comments to that rulemaking. We are calling for 25-hour CVRs in not just new aircraft, but retrofitting aircraft. And if FAA won't do it, we hope Congress will take action in the FAA reauthorization bill to ensure that it does. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is for safety. So with that, I will ask others to monitor ntsb.gov and our social media channels for additional media briefings and additional information that we may want to release. Again, we're trying to provide as much factual information as we can early on so the public knows what we're doing as part of the investigation and finding, and for each of you to know as well. So I will take questions. We'll do, again, I'll call on you. Please provide your name and your affiliation. You had your hand up first.
I'm Mike with CNN. Pete Montini, my buddy, is the expert, so forgive me if I mess up any of the parlance. But could we talk about the auto pressurization light that failed 3 times and Alaska Airlines' decision not to allow the aircraft to fly to Hawaii? How concerned were you learning that information? I know that you said it was very benign, nothing occurred when the auto pressurization light failed, but again, not being Mr. Montini, that stuck out to me. Could you talk to us laymen's a little bit more about that?
And just to clarify, the word benign was not one by the NTSB, but reported to us as benign.
Okay, thank you.
So we will want to look into that system further, and we're going to want to look at the maintenance and repair logs. We'll want to talk to maintenance personnel, and we're going to want to look at any sort of repairs that were made to the aircraft from delivery. The question, I apologize for the viewers, the question was on the auto pressurization light that illuminated. It's certainly a concern, and it's one that we want to dig into and look at what occurred there, and if there is any relation at all or correlation to what occurred on this event. We don't know that at this time. I don't have all the details on the December 7th illumination when that lit. January 3rd occurred in flight. The other occurred after it had landed, which would be, there wouldn't be a pressure issue when you're on the ground.
So it shows that the cabin is not being pressurized properly? Is that the function of this light?
That's the question is the function on the light, for the light. That's what it would indicate, or it could be just a failure of the light.
Okay.
It may have nothing to do with the auto pressurization system. It could be something wrong with the light.
And my final, before you go back to my colleagues, is that weird, or is that an unusual decision for an airline to just kind of sideline an aircraft and decide not to fly it over the Pacific Ocean because of something that could be wrong?
The question is on the ETOPS restriction, or the restriction Alaska put in place to move that aircraft over water to Hawaii. That is a decision. That's a question. Great question for Alaska. Those are questions we are asking as well. Yes, and then we'll go here.
Actually, KGW News, how important is it to find this door? Can you finish the investigation if you don't have it?
The question is, how important is it for us to find the door, and how key is it to our investigation? Will we be able to determine how this occurred? Our structures team is incredibly talented. Our research and engineering team is incredibly knowledgeable. We have a lot of ability in our lab with our microscopes to really look at some of the components more in depth. It's just going to take longer. We'll figure out what occurred here and how it occurred here, but this is a key missing component, and that's why we want to find it. Yeah.
So based on the investigation, what you found so far in your investigation, Fedor Zarhan with the Oregonian.
Thank you.
Based on what you found so far, what are the leading theories on what may have happened? What do you think happened?
The question is, what are the leading theories on what happened? The NTSB only deals in facts. We don't guess or speculate. We go where the facts lead us, where the evidence takes us. And so right now we are in a fact-finding phase of the investigation. What fact-finding means is we want to document all the evidence. We want to make sure we have all the pictures we have all the that we need, all the components we may need off of the aircraft, that we are asking the right questions for the right information. But the analysis of how this happened occurs later. Yes. I'll come back to you.
Nancy Keats with the Wall Street Journal. Can you go into more detail about how you're going about narrowing where to find the door plug? And does the fact that the CVR was overwritten, does that hamper that search? Any sort of details on how you're going to narrow that field?
Yeah, the question is the narrowing of the search area for the door plug. First of all, we used radar returns for narrowing the area to begin with. And there's data that our engineering team will look for to see if they could further narrow the area even more. Yes, and I think you had a second question.
Victor Park with KTU. Have you been able to speak to all of the passengers or track them down? And do you plan to release any passenger manifests?
The question is, have we interviewed any of the passengers, and do we intend to release a passenger manifest? The NTSB does not release passenger manifests, first and foremost. When it comes to interviews of the passengers, our survival factors team will at some point interview passengers. Right now they are documenting the exterior and interior of the aircraft, and then when they develop questions, they will reach out to the passengers that they feel they would like to interview. Yeah.
So, NTSB earlier shared a diagram of the door plug and where it was. So can you point us to any particular components there that could have failed or that were found to have failed?
The question is on the diagram that we released over social media of the door plug and the structure, and what components on that structure failed. We still have to analyze that. This is why we are currently taking pictures of how it looks in situ right now as it's on the airframe. Then we will take off those components and we will send it back to our lab to further evaluate in very strong microscopes, and they'll be able to see what is happening or what occurred in those components. Yes.
Hi, Deborah with Reuters. You had mentioned that the scene was chaotic. When you first went on board, presumably today, can you describe what you saw? Did it look like a chaotic scene from what you were able to tell?
The question is, what did I see when I boarded the plane? First of all, I went on the plane yesterday. I always go on scene before I ever meet with media. That's the first thing I do when I arrive at a scene, if I'm able to. But today, obviously, we had a closer look and a longer look at everything on the from the flight deck through the cabin. All the oxygen masks are down, of course, except for the one that we're looking into. In the rows 26A, B, and C, one of the oxygen masks that 26C was using was intact. 26B, A, and the extra oxygen mask was sheared off, the tubing. The seats in 26 and 25 were torqued, and there was a lot of damage to the interior paneling trim. My impression when I saw that is it must have been a terrifying event to experience.
I just have a quick question. If the 25-hour period would make a difference in being able to better understand, why is the limit 2 hours?
The question is, why is the limit 2 hours on CVRs right now? It used to be 30 minutes, and then it was increased to 2 hours at one point. And now we are pushing to increase it to 25 hours, consistent with international partners. Yes.
You said the plane had been, after the ETOPS restriction, it had been flagged for additional maintenance that hadn't been completed before the incident. Is that right?
The question is, after the ETOPS restriction was put in and after the 3 times that Alaska was aware of the illumination of the auto pressurization light alert, What they asked for is for maintenance to take a more in-depth look at that light that was illuminating. But that work had not been done yet prior to this event.
So they checked it each time it was reported that it illuminated, and then after the third time in the ETOPS restriction, they wanted to do a deeper dive into why that light kept coming on.
Yeah, so the question is on the 3 times. They did, we have record that it was, they were tested and then reset by maintenance personnel.
What is the plan for the next few days? Helicopters, drones, anything?
So the question is on the plan for the next few days. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Structures wants to continue looking at the airframe, at the door plug structure, and they're going to want to take off certain components and send it back to the lab. They're also going to want to look at the door plug that's on the opposite side of the aisle that is intact, and look at how that functions in comparison to what they're seeing on the left side of the airplane. Our survival factors team will be doing interviews of the rest of the flight attendants in the aft of the airplane. Other interviews will take place. We'll look for maintenance records, repair logs. There's a lot of information we still have to collect and a lot we still have to document. Again, we've only been on scene for 24 hours, one day. We have a lot of work to do. This isn't going to be a 1 or 2 days and we're done. This could be, weeks that we're here. As far as the search, we are looking, though I cannot confirm, we are looking to take a helicopter up to search for the door plug, and possibly drones as well. I know that some of the homeowners were using their drones to look today. We appreciate that. So more work will be done on that, and we still have our team that will go out. And again, I want to thank the FBI and local law enforcement for their work and their help in helping us search for the door plug. It is key. Thank you for that.
Hi, Giselle with NBC News. What's the significance of any of the cell phones that you found? Are they going to help you locate where the door is a little more accurately, or is it just like?
What's the significance of the cell phones? Well, cell phones have actually helped us determine some things that occurred after tragedies. I'll mention a mid-air collision investigation that occurred in Ketchikan, Alaska, where cell phones and photos really helped us in our final work on the investigation. So those are key. We'll look through those and then return them. But it also helps in telling us, are we looking in the right area?
What clues exactly are you hoping to find on the door when you do find it, and could there be markings that indicate whether it's a manufacturing flaw?
The question is, what are we looking for when we get the door? Our structures team will want to look at everything on the door, all of the components on the door to look at witness marks, to look at any paint transfer, what shape the door was in when found. That can tell them a lot about what occurred.
Andrew Bissett, Point 6 News. What kind of material was the door plug made from? Is it some kind of aluminum or composite?
The question is on the material for the door plug. I don't have that right now, but I will get it for our next press media briefing, and then also I'll make sure that our media team provides that information. Yeah.
The door is intact? I mean, is there a possibility that it could disintegrate?
The question is the door intact. Obviously we're still searching for it, but 2 cell phones were found. I think we can find, hopefully, the door as well.
Do you happen to know if the 2 seats near the plug were left vacant intentionally, or if that was just chance?
Were the 2 seats left vacant intentionally? They just happened to be empty seats.
Claire, you mentioned there were other rows that were damaged apart from 26A, 26, and 25. Can you explain what the damage was in those rows?
Yeah, so the question is on the damage in the other rows that weren't 26 or 25. It was everything from trim on the paneling to paneling being pushed out. There was insulation that had been pulled out, or some panels on the floor that had come off. On the windows, you can see, because the paneling came out, you can see into the windows that the plastic portion of the window is pulled back. The seal and the glass portion of the window is fully intact, however. All right, one more question.
Have you checked out the lake yet? Commonwealth Lake. It's in the search zone.
The question is on the lake. That is on our list.